Welcome to Unsolicited UX, a podcast full of advice and opinions that you didn't ask for. I'm Jay Keatsman, and each month I'll be sitting down with a professional from the world of UX, product design, and tech to dig into their work, their wins, and their lessons learned, so you don't have to. Whether you're deep in the trenches or just a little UX curious, there's something here for everyone. Check out Unsolicited UX on Substack, Spotify, and YouTube, and enjoy the conversation. Ricardo Martins, welcome to Unsolicited UX.
Yes, thank you for inviting me, Jay.
Could you go ahead and start by just introducing yourself?
Okay, I I can tell you basically that I'm a very curious person. I like to study different topics. So it's very difficult to define myself because I like to change every day. So today I'm just packing my stuff to change my home, and tomorrow I'll be a professor, and then very next day I will be a business strategist, and another day I will just be traveling, taking photographs. So I enjoy doing different things, but the thing that I do most of my time is teaching as a professor of service design.
Okay, professor of service design. And you also said business strategy. What role does that play in your professional life?
Look, I started very early as a freelance designer. I started as a graphic designer. So I used to do very basic stuff like stationery or visual identities and business cards, etc. But very fast, I started to have conversations with the clients about business, about impact, about conversion. So I realized that what a graphic designer does is not just graphic design. What we do basically, we solve a problem. So having those kinds of conversations with different clients got me into this world of strategy. Strategy is all about priorities. So we should do this, not that. And basically, the most important question that any company needs to answer is priority. What should we do first, and second, and third? So business strategy is all about priorities. If you don't have clear priority, we'll be in trouble. So sometimes graphic designers like to think that the priority is communication. It's not. The priority is results. Priority is growth. Priority is competition. So coming from this side, it was natural to move to service design, because service designing, graphics and communication is just one pillar of service. Service is made of three parts: people, process, and physical evidence. Physical evidence includes graphic design. So I enjoyed to have this holistic perspective, to start thinking not only in terms of visuals but about all the whole context. So this is the what I call business strategy.
Nice. Okay. So you've mentioned that you're a professor, you work in business strategy, you have a background in graphic design and in service design. Connect the dots for me. What does that timeline look like?
The timeline is long, but I like to tell the story because it's very interesting to see how one thing leads to another in a very unpredictable
Yeah.
way. Because I
Yeah.
started having interest on graphic design in the beginning of my career. I started as a computer programmer, and then soon I realized that to study software or to develop software would be too much for me, very difficult, because I had no computer at my home. So I got fascinated by visual communication. Then I started working with this thing. And I was very young when I started helping companies to do digital transformation, because I had the technology background, and at the same time I have this knowledge about design. So I helped, for example, newspapers with 200 employees that produce a newspaper every single day and a new issue, and to transform the whole company to become digital. And I was doing this in 1997. So this was very, very long time ago. And after a while, I start working with visual identity. But visual identity took me to branding. And in branding, I learned that brand is a promise. But who fulfills the promise of brand is the business operations. Then I started studying Lean Six Sigma, that is all about optimizing processes inside organizations. But studying Lean Six Sigma, I realized that this was missing very important component, that is the perspective of the customer and the perspective of employees. So from Lean Six Sigma, this took me to services. So it was computer programming, graphic design, branding, operations, Lean Six Sigma, and service design.
I love that. I feel like I relate to that kind of. What I'm hearing you say is that you kept identifying gaps, or kept identifying where there was a need to learn, and then you moved into that space. So it sounds like, do you have a passion for learning? Is that a
Yeah, in fact, I have a hate for routine. It's not passion for learning, because every time we talk about routine, I was the teenager that was in charge of cleaning the living room at my home, and every single day I changed the position of furniture, the sofa, the dining table, and the chairs. And when my father used to open the door, and it was a completely new apartment. And my father, this was so interesting that one day my father got into the wrong apartment and did not realize it, because it was normal to see different furniture and the position layouts. And when my father went into the kitchen was completely different, and my father realized that was not the his apartment. So because Ricardo was basically trying to avoid routine, so I like to experiment, to try new things, and so I prefer to think in this way. I love learning, of course, but before loving learning, I hate routine.
learning was more a vehicle to avoid routine?
Yeah, we can say that.
And so, what's a logical next step from service design?
Mm, this is a good question. Hey, you did not tell me that you were going to ask so good questions, so this is a challenge for me. I Let me think about it. The next step after services, hmm, I think I cannot imagine something right now, but I imagine that the next step would be ethics, because
Mm,
the service they became a nightmare. So it seems that there is no ethics around. People don't care about others. They lie a lot. They don't deliver what they promised, and the fulfillment of their promises is definitely is a big issue right now. So I keep asking myself why they are not just honest, why they stop promising things that they know they cannot deliver. And services today, they promise, they are not delivering the promise. Do you remember I told you that I left branding towards services, because in branding they promise you too much,
mm.
and also in sales they also promise lots of things, just trying to sell you a new contract. But when it's moments to fulfill it, it does not work. So for me, it's missing. The missing gap is ethics. So we need to think about respect. We need to think about not uh, cognitive empathy, because empathy became a tool, but it's wrong. Empathy should be character, should be something natural. But now, today, empathy is just a tool that you use sometimes, sometimes you don't use it. So this concerns me a lot.
I love that was a great answer. I love that I think you're completely right too, that ethics is not uh, often considered because it's not incentivized, right? What's the incentive to be ethical? I mean, I mean, it's not a very pleasant question, but uh, so I guess
Yeah,
maybe
but
my question would be, how, if you reflect on it, how would you incentivize ethics, or like how can you utilize service design to create more ethical experiences?
mm, I think that if I had the answer to this question, I would be a millionaire. I'm not a
Yeah,
millionaire.
yeah, of course.
I don't have that answer, but I think that the look, I don't want to say that every service is unethical. This is not the case.
Sure.
I have been getting in touch with very interesting examples of amazing cases. For example, here, not here, in Brazil, I know a restaurant that has such an interesting story about the chef. He used to work for another boss and was so badly treated by this boss, and she told herself, when I have my company, I will never treat my employees this way. And she created a place that the employees, they are so passionate about their work that they did a tattoo in the neck with the brand of the restaurant, and some
Wow.
they tattoo in the hand and here. It's like it's almost like a religion, because she did such a transformation, and she treats the employees with such a power, so she protects the employees and the employees protect the business, and this generates excellent results for the the clients, to the customers also. So, and another example, I was in St. Augustine some weeks ago, and I found a place, this very small business. They have just basically two employees, the owner and another girl that works there. And they have such a high rating in Google reviews. I think it's 4.8 or 4.9. This is very, very high. And it's not just a few reviews, like 8 people, 10 people. No, it's hundreds. So to reach that high level of reviews, you should really be respectful, considerate, and you should be ethical. So I have been finding some good examples. So there is hope. And I believe that answering your question, the to incentivize is to share those stories. Look what happens when you treat your employees with respect. What happens when you treat your employees with respect, and the employees treat your customers with respect. So this, I think that we should share the good stories also, not only Apple or Disney, that in fact are not good examples. They are very good on PR, public relations, but I think that the real result still happens to the small business.
Yeah, and employee retention is a real metric that companies care about, and so there is like a business argument there, in terms of the first example, I think, and then also reviews. I mean, this is anecdotal, but I can tell you firsthand that I rely on reviews. So for myself as a user to a restaurant, reviews are also crucial to attracting new users. So I think you have great use cases. uh, you mentioned
Yes.
Brazil. Did you grow up in Brazil?
Yes, I was born there. I'm a Brazilian.
And did you start your career in Brazil?
Yes, when I
Yeah.
was around 18 years old, I'm 48 now, so this is 30 years ago. In fact, I started learning computer programming when I was 14 years old, not 18,
Wow.
because in fact, I want to study electronics. Because this is a funny story. My parents, they had no money to buy me toys, so I used to build my toys. And I used to build my toys using garbage and pieces of plastic, foam boards, or wood, glass, whatever is available. I used to combine those things together and start to see what is LED, the light, or even a small engine that you plug into the batteries and start to spinning. And I start to create boats to put in the swimming pool. And so this idea of not having toys created in my mind the mindset of using the available resources to build solutions. So this is very interesting. We can transfer this skill to any business right now. So instead of building toys, I can build business models. And so I started my career there, but I wanted to study electronics, but I was too young. The minimum age for to study electronics would be 15 years old. I was 14. So one day a group of people went to my school and they talked about this thing called computer. And I looked to that green, black and green screen, very old, vintage way style. And I told myself, hey, this is cooler than electronics. And then I started studying computer programming. So this is what I did before starting my career as a designer.
But you were an engineer from an early age, building your own toys.
I can tell that.
Uh, Question about Brazil. So you have lived in and worked in multiple cultures. And so I'm just curious if there's anything you experienced in your work in Brazil that's unique or distinct, like working with Portuguese as opposed to English, or Brazilian culture versus American culture.
Mm, I think that there are lots of differences and similarities also. I can I think that I can start with the similarities. So Brazil and the United States, for example, they since Brazilians and Americans they study the same books, marketing from Philip Kotler or Peter Drucker and etc. So basically you can see lots of similar logic happening at the same time. And so Brazil used to drink from the American culture for a long time. So we have lots of similar concepts, and we drink from your culture, from your movies, your music industry, etc. So we have similarities, but in terms of differences, there is a major difference between Brazil and United States. United States is driven by rules and liabilities and regulations. In Brazil, we are not driven by that. So in Brazil, it's natural to find turn workarounds, some challenges to overcome some challenges that we try to do the same thing in the United States. The the services here they get crazy. So let me give an example. If you go for, I remember going to Waffle House in the morning, and the girl asked me, "It's to here or to go?" And I told her, "It's to here." And she told me, "Sorry, but we cannot accept a new customer now." Okay, so what I did? So I changed my mindset because I just want to buy a food. There was no difference for me to stay there or just to wrap and go. So I just seated in the chair and I start to choose a meal for to go. And this the brain of the woman got a tilt. You know the old machines that you have a tilt that the machine is broken. So her brain got a tilt, and she was without reaction. No, you cannot do that. Why? You told me that you cannot eat here. So I will ask to go. And she was confused, but you
Yeah.
told me some things ago that you would eat here. And so I changed my mind. So that's okay. And so this is natural in Brazil. So nobody gets crazy about that thing. So here, every time you try to change the script, they get crazy. And so I
Mm,
had a very hard time when I moved to United States because I brought my Brazilian mindset and I tried to
yeah.
find ways to get a solution. As a culture that has a very similar mindset to Brazil is India. India, they have a concept called Jugad. Jugad, basically, if you could translate to English, would be improvisation. So they try to improvise whatever you have around you. They need to find a solution for a problem. They use the materials, the resources they have around them, and they will find a solution. So it's almost impossible to stop an Indian person. They will find a way. And sometimes they even can be a little bit pushy, trying to to get their results, but they are very good on action. In Brazil is similar. So when things go wrong, we never give up easily. But I see here that if something goes out of the script, people freeze. So those are some differences that I can tell you.
That's awesome. It makes me wonder if there's like yeah, what I'm hearing you describe as a culture that's probably breeding more creativity. So I'm just wondering, like if there's any studies out there that would prove that a culture like Brazil or India produces more creative mindsets, or at least creative problem solving.
Yes, but I can tell you that the source or the origin of this thing is the environment, because Brazil and India both have the same characteristic. They have a lack of resources. So we don't have abundance of resources there. So whenever you have a problem, so you need, for example, um, I need a car. I don't have a car. So the Indian person would take a bike, an engine of a blender, and combine the blender engine with the bike, and you produce a transportation machine. And they will do this very easily. So they create they are natural inventors because of the lack of resources. So for example, why Japanese are so good on avoiding waste? Because they don't have physical space. They need to think twice before putting another object in the room, in the business, in the space,
Hmm.
because there is not space. The space is very limited and expensive. So this creates in their minds a mind that avoids waste at all costs, and this creates the culture of lean. Lean comes from Japan. The lean thinking is avoiding wastes come from a place that cannot waste, that is the Japan country. So do you see the abundance that exists in the United States is good for one side because you have the tools, you have the resources, this is great. But this can create like some comfortable zone. People they feel comfortable because they have everything they need, so they don't exercise their creativity that much.
What an amazing segue back to service design. I think now would be a great time to ask you to, as a professor of service design, to give a definition of what service design is.
Oh, this is good. When we had a conversation about this in SCAD. So SCAD always had to explain to others, to students, alumni, to the parents, or even staff or the leaders, what is service design. So I used to say that there is not a single definition because the definition depends on the audience. If you want to explain service design to your mother, basically you would say service design is all about avoiding that you stay 1 hour in the phone trying to cancel a service.
Hmm.
So service design is about making the services better, or making your life better, because your life is made of services. So the matter of life, the source matter of life is our services. So when you improve services, you improve life. That's it. This is the easy answer, okay? So, but if you are a professional, so probably you want some more solid or grounded definition. So I can tell you that service design is all about directly improving experience of employees to indirectly improve the experience of customers. I like this definition because it puts the employee in the first place. We In service design we cannot control the customers, but we can control the service. So when we influence the employees, this indirectly creates a positive outcome for the customers. So this can be considered, I think that is a useful definition.
Yeah. But you picked an example that is something that particularly gets me frustrated. So I have to ask about the example. You mentioned, and I know it was just a random example, but you mentioned the when you're waiting on the phone for an hour to try to cancel a service or something, to cancel a plan. If Could you make the argument that this business doesn't want you to cancel, and so making it difficult to cancel is could be a priority? I'm not saying that it's an ethical practice. I'm saying it's a potential mindset. So from a
Okay.
service design standpoint, how do you like reconcile that? How do you push back on that and have a more maybe ethical approach to designing the system?
Yes. So look, what I told you, I consider this conversation like a cheap talk in a bar between two friends.
Yeah.
But if I go to a company, the answer would be very context dependent, because it depends on each organization, each context. So, for example, I know about some companies. I think Netflix. Netflix is very easy to cancel the service. You just press the button, cancel. That's it. Other companies, if you try to cancel, it's a nightmare. You can take
Right.
days. It's exhausting. It basically is very very difficult. So in service design we defend always the systems thinking. In the systems thinking or holistic thinking, you should understand that the solution for a damaged system is another system. So there is not a silver bullet that you can just activate and will solve all the problems. Basically, if you have a system that is not working well, so for example, why the company needs to make the canceling so difficult? Because they have the potential of losing lots of customers. But why they have the potential to losing so much customers? Because the quality of the service is lower than expected. Why is lower than expected? Because the expectations are high. Why the expectations are high? Because the salesperson, they are promising too much. They are promising the paradise. Why are they promising the paradise? Because their sales goals are very demanding, very difficult, and so they need to promise to sell more. So you see, there is a connection between the sales goals with canceling contracts. So the root cause of this you need to address. If the root cause of promising too much, can we change that? maybe the creating too much expectation, raising the expectations is the real problem, not the people cancel or not the contracts. So with systems thinking, we always think in terms of root cause. Where is the beginning of the problem, and we should work there.
I love that. And how do you differentiate service design or systems thinking from customer experience or CX?
Because when I gave you the definition about what service design, I told you that is to directly influence the employees, to indirectly influence the customers. But the service design is not only about customers. For example, service design can be about citizens, and citizens, they don't pay money for the public services, they pay taxes. Is different. So we have citizen experience, we have customer experience, we have employee experience, we have I can tell you the shareholder experience. So you have lots of experiences together. So but in all those levels you have services. So you have services for customers, for citizens, for employees, and for shareholders. So these different groups of people, they have different expectations and needs. What all of them have in common? They have experience. And you have a service experience when you use your knowledge and your resources for the benefit of others, to provide some kind of value for them. So, answering your question, customer experience provides value for customers, but service design can also provide value for other layers, employees, citizens, shareholders, etc. So customer is very focused. So it's based on value exchange for money. In the case of citizens, what they get is they don't uh, pay money, they pay taxes. Employees, they don't pay money, but they get value when they get support from the organization to get what they want. And the shareholders, they don't pay money, they pay investment, and they also want to get value. So all of them want value. So service design is to providing value not only for customers but for other groups of stakeholders.
Working with such a comprehensive perspective where you're considering so many different stakeholders, have you ever encountered pushback from your stakeholders? Because I could see this is something that I think happens for just UX researchers, which is probably just a sliver of the mindset of a service designer. So I'm just curious about any sort of potential pushback that you've encountered or even heard of in terms of people feeling like you're stepping into their lane because you're considering the big picture, the whole picture.
Yes, but look, this is a good problem. This is a good problem to have. Basically means that you are good. When you are good, people you will see threat all the time. They look to you, threat. They will think that you are potential threat to them. So this is a good problem to have. So yes, I faced pushbacks because when you start asking very good questions, like you do, I like your questions. I think that you have pushbacks also. Every time you ask intelligent questions, people look to you. Hey, why are you asking exactly what we need to ask?
Right. How dare you ask the right question?
Yes, how dare you ask the right question? I remember a case, my friend. You have no idea. The guy was fired in the first day he started working the business because he worked for show business, and the show business, they used to travel with the artist to different cities in the country. So he went into the bus. So the production group, the staff, travel by bus, and the artist usually goes by airplane. So he was just stepping into the bus, and during the travel time that took like let's suppose 7 or 8 hours, he was new to the company, right? So he knew nothing. So he needed to ask a lot of questions to try to understand the context. And he did so very good questions that the producer realized in that moment, this man will find all the problems that I have been causing in this company. So it's not a
Yeah.
good idea to have this person asking the right questions now. So just manipulated the situation
Oh,
and fired him first day.
oh, that is not the direction I thought that story was going in. I thought that I was going to say that that leader had the was observant enough to acknowledge the importance of the questions. It was a backfire. It hurt the guy got fired.
I can tell another story that happened. I was talking to the CEO of a very big company that years later was sold by 1 billion reais, not dollars. So in dollars would be $200 million. And one day, I was a graphic designer and I was producing an international catalog to sell their candies in a fair in Germany. But it was so difficult to get the list of products to put in the catalog. My work was just to produce the catalog, to put the items, some pictures, the price, the EN codes, etc., the barcodes. And I was seeing how difficult it was for the CEO to get that information. And then one day I came to him and asked, hey, if I asked you to give me the list, the complete list of all the products that you produce in your company, would you be able to deliver this list in 5 minutes to me? And his answer was, I think that I would need to do some phone calls to get that. Look, I was not expecting I need to do some phone calls for a CEO. I was expecting I would go into the system, click on the button, complete list of products, export in Excel. This was basic stuff for me. But no. So every time that I ask those kind of questions, those people they start to like me because I was asking questions that their staff never asked to them because they have a fear. Oh my goodness, if I ask this question, they will fire me the next day. I was a freelancer. It's impossible to fire me. So I asked all the questions I wanted.
An unintended argument for hiring contract workers.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so as a professor, something I'm interested in is the sort of, I'm going to call it a gap. Gap might be the wrong word, but the gap between theory and practical application. And so I'm just curious if you have any thoughts around uh, the, I guess I don't even know how to frame the question the right way. Um, when you're teaching, is that a consideration? Or, and maybe service design doesn't have that issue as much as other fields, but I feel like sometimes in the academic setting there is a gap between theoretical learning and practical application. And so I haven't asked a
Yeah,
question, but I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on the topic.
yes, I have a lot of facts, thoughts, in fact. So I can tell you, I have an old school mindset about those things because I came from practice. I used to practice to work. So for a graphic designer, you know that your work is not complete until you have something printed in front of you. If I go to the computer and start creating lots of layouts and visualizations, but if I never print them, if I never transform in a package, in a poster, in a book, whatever it is, I understand that my work is incomplete. So I was trained to think in terms of practical terms. I love theory. I have hundreds of books. I enjoy reading. I enjoy seeing the world from other eyes. But at the same time, I can see today that there are so much creepy and crap stuff around. And so I see that there is bad theory. Bad theory basically is just opinion based. People wake up in the morning and they have an idea about a book and they write starting creating all kinds of ideas or theories, and they say that this represents the reality. This represents how things should be, how it should look like. And good theory for me is something, is a kind of knowledge that enable you to save time, to avoid wasting time and energy on useless stuff, because you good theory basically uh, helps you to work faster. I will give a very simple example. Let's suppose that you need to create a signage. It's like a very big board that will be seen from the distance of 30 feet. So, question: what should be the right size of the letters for this distance, 30 feet? If you don't understand how your eyes work, you basically would you have no clue about what should be the right appropriate size of the letters, or what kind of letter should I use. But when you know how your eyes work, what is the how the distance affects the minimum stroke of the letters that you should use, you can make a very basic calculation and to realize that for this distance, the minimum thickness of the stroke should be X. And if you know that information, basically you will find the right answer in the first attempt. But if you don't know theory, you basically need to print on a piece of paper and you need to walk 30 feet away and to see, can I read? No, it's too small. So go back to the computer and make it too bigger. Print again, walk 30 feet away and check again. So this is amateur. And lots of decisions that designers need to take, they can be faster if you have good theory. But what I see today is first that this is one of my complaints against design thinking, because in design thinking they don't use theory. I never saw in a design thinking workshop they teach new theory. Never, ever. So they ignore one of the most important things that a designer should know, that is good theory. And what happens then? They start creating speculation about how things should be, and this can be considered practical, but in fact is just trial and error. And trial and error is not different from what your mother does, from your neighbor does.
This is a perfect time for me to. So I saw a quote that someone quoted you online, and they said that you said the time has finally come to abandon design thinking, and the era of thinking design begins. And so I would love to hear you talk about your idea of thinking design and what does that mean to you?
Okay, so when we are thinking about what creates the solution for a problem, is not design thinking. What creates the solution is your mindset. So, design thinking is associated to a group of different mindsets. For example, fail earlier, is a mindset. Another mindset is collaboration. So we need to work together. This is a mindset. We should have empathy or to be centered on human needs. This is a mindset. We should try what other people they haven't tried before. This is creativity. This is a mindset. So what produced the results that people praise in design thinking is not design thinking. This what produced the results are different mindsets. So the mindsets that are associated with design thinking, they don't belong to design thinking because you can find those mindsets all over the places. Even outside design, you can find in economics, in medicine, in pharmacy, in chemistry, or whatever. You can find those mindsets in other places. For example, for medicine, collaboration is crucial. It's impossible for a surgery to produce a surgery. It's not possible to to make a surgery without collaboration. But nobody mentioned, oh, let's use the design thinking approach. No, they just talk. Let's do this together. So doctors, they use the concept of fail earlier when they create experiments. They create experiments when they try to do the surgery in a pig. For example, the eye of the pig is very similar to the eye of human beings. So when someone needs to practice or to test new treatments or techniques for eyes, the human eye, they try in a pig. So they are failing earlier. They are using a prototype to practice those things. But this is not design, this is medicine. So the mindset is what really creates the advantage, what really solves the problems. So I don't have nothing against the right mindsets. What I have against design thinking is the idea of a single process, that we have like a cake recipe, cook cutter way of doing things. And this is not true. What is the cookie cutter thing in design thinking? Is the double diamond. That is fake, is false, because the idea of divergence and convergence in double diamond does not represent what really happens in your brain. I give an example. When you're doing research, people used to say that in research we are being divergent. But this is not true, because during the process of research, you need to converge lots of time in a process of zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. And this is happening inside the divergence stage of the double diamond. So lots of assumptions that they follow blindly, they have no substance, they have no evidence. And people keep repeating those things without criticizing. This is not design, because designers, they are critical by definition. They shouldn't follow recipes. They should create their own recipes. If you are following the recipes of others, you are not a designer. You are anything else. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, so you mentioned that there's a lack of theory in design thinking, and then you also mentioned other issues with it. But I'm curious if you would if you would find more value in it if they amended it to have a theoretical first stage that was probably specific to the problem space, right? Because it's not just one thing, but it's very contextual.
Hey Jay, I didn't know that you would try to convince me to save design thinking and double. But okay, so I have a proposal to make it work again. In fact, I wrote an article about this. It's online. I can provide the link for you later. So
Please.
the problems, let me tell you a funny story. One day, I was reading something in the internet, and I found a paper. This paper was talking about business fads. This paper was from 1994, much before design thinking. And this paper was talking about the business fads that come and go. So lots of fads happening before, like TQM, that is total quality management, business outsourcing, reengineering, and many other attempts to be the silver bullet. And the paper was criticizing these fads, and the paper demonstrated that a fad that is something temporary has 8 evidence that proves that something is a fad. So some of the evidence, when I start to pay attention, design thinking has exactly all the 8 evidence that shows that's a fad. So I will tell you some of them. The first one, oversimplification. Design thinking oversimplify. So you come and you can tell that no, this is easy, it's very simple, we can solve this problem. So this is the first problem. So if you stop oversimplifying, maybe you can save design thinking. The second thing is over promising. You over promising, basically you say we can end the war in Ukraine using design thinking. So, hey, what are you talking about? This is over promising, and people keep saying that design thinking is able to do something that cannot do. If you if you if you go for the history of design thinking, you will see that people like to say, no, this is from Herbert Spencer and from Richard Buchanan and etc. No, my friend. Design thinking is something connected to ideal. And the first vital thing that talked about how the IDEO used to work using design thinking was a video that shows IDEO creating what? A shopping cart. A shopping cart, my friend. That's to buy groceries. So, look, it's very different to produce a shopping cart and to end poverty, to end hunger, and the war in Ukraine is not the same thing, but they promise you it's the same thing. We can use the same process created, use it to create a shopping cart to end war, but it's not possible. And this process that IDEO used to work, they called deep dive. So deep dive was a trademark from IDEO that demonstrated their process, and deep dive was sold to Deloitte some years later. So Deloitte is the owner of this trademark deep dive. So in this documentary that you can find on the YouTube, they never use the expression design thinking. They use deep dive. But deep dive has the same problems that design thinking has. Oversimplify, overpromise, one size fits all solutions. So there is one solution that works anywhere, for the small bakery in your neighborhood, to the big hospital, or to the poverty in Africa. This is one size fits all things. So design thinking has all the qualities that shows that it's a fad. So to save design thinking is not only about adding theory on it. This could be useful, yes, would be, but it's not enough. They should stop doing all the other behaviors that are common in business fads.
That's great. Well, you definitely share the article with me as well as the documentary, and I will include those in the show notes so people can check them out. That was a great answer. Okay, I have 2 questions left for you. The first is a question I ask every guest, and it is, what is a UX or work-related opinion that you might hesitate to share in a meeting?
Is the fact that people what many of the things that people do is just theater. So they pretend to be innovators. They pretend they are really uh, concerned about the customer needs, their expectations. In fact, it's not. It's all about ego. They are just trying to prove themselves that are better than others. They are selfish. They use empathy when it's convenient. This is not real empathy. That should be based on character, not based on cognition. So this is what comes to my mind often, and this is upsetting, because basically you see that you are working in a theater, but no, is look, theater is better because in theater they know that when the curtains they are closed, you can stop faking. But in companies, the curtains are always open. They never stops pretending. They never stops acting. So they keep pretending to be innovators. Caring about customers and their needs, but this is not true.
Can you imagine a world where we started calling out corporate theater? That would, I don't know if that would
Yeah,
go very well.
yes, this would be. I think this would be positive because people they would need to drop their masks, and you could trust people better.
It's true. Yeah. Okay. Final question is a question from a mentee. And their question is, what is the most challenging experience of your career thus far? And what did you take away from it?
I think that was experience dealing with a narcissistic boss,
Mm,
because narcissistic people, uh, they are the most challenging kind of people to deal with because they are like zombies. They feed. They are fed by your love or hate. If you love them, they they suck this energy from you. But if you hate them, they are happy also. So the only solution to deal with a narcissistic person is to ignore them. Basically, you have no emotions. You are not happy, you're not sad, you're not angry. Basically, you give nothing from your emotions to them. So I think that this is the biggest challenge. Every time I need to deal with a narcissistic people, this makes me to run away quickly, because there is no winner when you are fighting with a narcissistic. So the only option is to give up.
I kind of love that advice, though. I mean, I'm interpreting it to say knowing when to give up, because I guess I didn't expect that to be part of the advice, and I think that is healthy. It's like learning to say no, like learning when this is not going to go anywhere productive. That's a good lesson to learn.
Yes, and it's not a problem to give up. So people they are romantic about I never give up. When you are dealing with a narcissistic person, the only way to fix this person is if they born again. Since this is not possible, basically you just need to run away, get out of this place.
Well, Ricardo, is it okay for people to reach out to you online if they have any questions?
Yes, for sure, they can reach to me.
Okay. And where can people find you online?
Um, in the LinkedIn is the easiest way. So they just go there and search for Ricardo Martins, and they can find me quickly. My user profile on LinkedIn is Ricardo Alex Martins with S in the end is my profile page.
Okay. And I'll include that in the show notes as well.
Great.
Okay, Ricardo, thanks for being here, and have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you very much, Jay. It was very nice to talk to you, and I hope that we can keep in touch. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
See you then.